saying is Hulk Hogan wouldn't have been denied entry to Madison Square Garden. And if you're not at MSG tonight for the Raw House Show, then you're listening to us live on blogtalkradio.com/Wrestling Roundtable, because that's what we are. For the last time in 2011, we are live on the air with Wrestling Roundtable Radio, simulcast on GoFi Live. I'm the host, Eric Santamaria. Thank you for listening. Wanted to remind you, as always, before we introduce the panel, that we want you to go to WrestlingRoundtable.com. There is a huge news update for the day, as usual, for the pre-show time period. So all the latest results and goings-on in the world of mixed martial arts and pro wrestling. We also have uploaded some interviews we did this past weekend with Maria Kanellis and Dan Severn. Those are available now. Also, a new exclusive match, Shane Hagedorn versus Anthony Franco from early 2005 in WWWA. That's my little bah humbug Christmas present for everybody from this past weekend. We've got new polls coming later this week. We've got new SmackDown recaps from Zach Fellows in England, who writes for our site. Introducing right now the panel for the night. First up is Will Brooks. Hey, Will.
Hello, everybody. I had a lot of fun at Final Battle, even though I didn't get a chance to take a bump again. But at least I got to meet Dan Severn, and he's a complete class act, so go Dan.
Rodney LeConte is on now. Hey, yo, Rod.
Hey, yo, Eric. Hey, yo, everybody.
Our radio panelists. First up, from Chicago, Corey Ender Ake. Hey, Corey.
Hello, Eric. Good evening, everyone.
Amira Rahim coming up. Just a second.
Hey, everybody.
Today. There you are, Amira. Sorry about that. First up is mixed martial arts. Recently, Strikeforce had an event. It's been a little while since we've seen Strikeforce. They emanated in San Diego Saturday, December 17th on Showtime. It started a little late, Rod, because of boxing, but once it finally got started, we got a pretty interesting card. First up, I wanted to talk about the middleweight bout between Gegard Mousasi, who is still the Dream Middleweight Champion, though the belt was obviously not on the line here. That's in Japan. When he defeated Ovin St. Preux via unanimous decision. That's how I scored it, too. So how'd you think that fight was, Rod? What's your evaluation?
That was a light heavyweight fight.
That's exactly what I said. Light heavyweight champion.
So fight went exactly as I predicted. Musashi's just so talented that lately, I think after the King Mo loss, we kind of seen him in a little bit of a slump because he came in with a really impressive knockout to win the Strikeforce bout against Renato Sobral. We thought that this guy was really going to be one of the next big talents in the light heavyweight division. He got the decision, but I would like to see him get a finish. I mean, this guy's great on his feet. Hopefully he's been practicing his wrestling defense, but he got enough to get the decision over less experienced St. Preux.
I don't know how I said middleweight. Sometimes these things happen. Nobody's perfect.
First round, Mousasi was on fire in that round. I really thought we were actually going to see a finish there, especially once he put him on the ground. Time ran out there, and by the time we got to the third round, St. Preux had started working some takedowns and working from the top, but definitely too little too late. There was some truly horrible reffing going on. I mean, Mousasi got stood up in the middle of landing punches from the top. St. Preux got stood up from side control at some point, which is ridiculous. The sort of constantly standing people up out of dominant positions seems to be an issue in Strikeforce because I actually think on quite a few Strikeforce shows I've seen that same issue occur.
If you thought that was bad reffing, hold your horses, Amira, because coming up next... We've got the women's featherweight champion. They confused me there, too. They changed the title of that belt's weight class like 3 times, but now it's featherweight, 145. Christiane Cyborg Santos, her first fight back in quite a while, actually her first fight all year, but her first fight in a new contract for Strikeforce, and she quickly trounced Hiroko Yamanaka from Japan, making her Strikeforce debut. However, this TKO win in 16 seconds. I don't know about that, Rod. Again, maybe it's one of those situations where had this gone on a few more seconds, maybe it would have been the same finish, but I don't know. People didn't really seem in the crowd that night to think that it was stopped at an appropriate time, and you certainly didn't either.
No, I thought this was a real horrible stoppage. I understand that it was coming to an end at some point, coming closer, but I don't think it was the right time. I think just because Hiroko got knocked down, I don't think she was hurt enough where she was close to being knocked out. I still think she had some juice left, and there have been plenty of fights in the male divisions where fighters have gotten knocked down even worse, and even come back to win. I mean, if that ref was reffing UFC 125 with Frankie and Gray Maynard, he would have stopped it within 90 seconds of that round, and we wouldn't have had the great fight that we had in that title match. But this one, I really want to see how dominant Cyborg is. I want to see her maybe get tested a little bit. I think that's what's kind of intriguing. She's so dominant, and people want to see a women's 145 competitor actually step up, and I thought Hiroka would give her a little bit of a challenge, but Cyborg was too powerful. But yeah, the stoppage was at least 10 to 15 seconds too soon.
Admit it, you thought Yamanaka was cute. You didn't want to see her get beat up.
Exactly.
Well, Pat Barry, Czech Congo, this was not.
Yeah, definitely an early stoppage. I mean, definitely. At the same time, I don't know that was going any different. Yamanaka could not take her punches. I mean, she got dropped twice in 16 seconds. Yeah, she definitely should have gotten a chance to get back up, but I think had she gotten back up, probably would have gone the same. So much gets made of Chris Cyborg is just bigger than all her opponents, as if it's not really skill, it's just this giant size advantage. But in this case, Yamanaka's bigger than her. She's taller,
well,
she has a reach advantage. She also has a reach advantage. For Muay Thai fighters, that's a definite advantage. She couldn't get in there. Much as we didn't see a ton of this fight, given that it was obviously only 16 seconds, Cyborg's Muay Thai is on point. One of the things she does so well, and something that my coach yells at me all the time for not doing, is she just constantly goes forward. She constantly keeps the pressure on. Despite early stoppage, I still think very, very impressive.
Well, I guess she made strategically the wise move, immediately just stormed right in on Yamanaka, didn't even give her a chance. Plus, afterwards, they cut to Ronda Rousey in the crowd, and she just followed us on Twitter, so I'm very happy about that. In the main event, Gilbert Melendez, who just, I guess, a couple months ago, was talked about heading to the UFC lightweight division, at least that was the rumor, defended the lightweight title against Jorge Masvidal. And Masvidal is one of my favorite last names in MMA. Masvidal said just this week that he actually went into this fight with a wrist injury. Seemed like he sprained his wrist in training a couple weeks out before this fight, but either way, unanimous decision win for Melendez, and that's exactly how I scored it.
Right decision here. To me, this one was entertaining for the first couple rounds, but then it got kind of old because it was just very much the same thing, round after round after round. And basically had 5 rounds of Masvidal circling and throwing jabs just to get countered pretty much every time. I usually enjoy Melendez's fights more than this, but this was sort of dull to me. What I did think was odd was that at the end, Masvidal looked surprised that he didn't get the decision. And it was like, come on, I don't really think he won a single round, so I'm not sure what that was about there. Very dominant performance from Melendez.
I agree. Melendez's last few fights have been pretty entertaining. He's been finishing them. Now that there's been elbows allowed in Strikeforce, he's been really utilizing those. But this fight, we didn't really see that dominant performance, and this lightweight division, it's kind of hard to really dominate these opponents when everyone's so competitive. Masvidal and Melendez just pretty much, after round 3, it looked like it was the same fight. Not much going on. Melendez did a great job of defense and cutting off the cage. He did what he did and get the victory. I still am really curious to see what he would do against a real, name 155 or a top guy. I mean, I'm not sure what he would do against someone like Gray Maynard, who has powerful wrestling and great striking. So I'm really curious to see Melendez take on one of those top guys. If he's not going to UFC, let's have a 155er chance for the Strikeforce title, UFC 155er.
Coming up on Friday is one of the biggest, and I emphasized big, fights of the year, because not only is it Alistair Overeem's debut in UFC, not only is it Brock Lesnar's first fight, not just back once again, but his first fight in 2011. Right at the end here, and they're really hyping the size of these guys. And it's been going on for several weeks already, Rodney. My friends keep asking me who I think is going to win. They want to know my prediction, and I certainly want to hear from you and Amira, but I just want to throw this analysis out there first. I believe we may have touched upon it on the show before, but the unfortunate part about this fight, you've said to me, I think actually when we were watching this past Strikeforce event, how you were so relieved that Lesnar Jr. Dos Santos didn't happen because JDS would have killed Lesnar. Well, here's the thing on the Lesnar-Overeem fight. Lesnar is, unfortunately to me, going to have to rely on, and maybe a win's a win, so maybe it's not unfortunate to him, but he's going to have to rely on the exact strategy he's used in pretty much every fight he's had. Ground and pound once he uses his size to take down his opponent and pound him out. And I say unfortunate because he would have had to have either really improved on his stand-up to stand with Alistair Overeem. He's a K1 tournament winner with great knockout power, no less. But that's the thing, though. Lesnar's stand-up hasn't been too great. Like I said, he would have either really improved or just go back to the same strategy he's been using, and that's not really going to grow him as a fighter. I was hoping that his next fight back would be an opponent that would challenge him in a certain way to improve. Like when he did tap out Shane Carwin to that head and arm triangle, did we expect that? Did we see it coming? No, it was good for him. It showed some diversity in his game. And I don't know if we're really going to see it in this fight. That being said, I could still see Lesnar winning. He seems like he's gotten a little healthier and that he's a little driven in this, whereas Overeem, last we saw him against Fabricio Verdum, he was battling a lot of nagging injuries. He's had time off. He's had to deal with lots of drug tests. He's got his mother going into remission with cancer that he was flying back to Holland for. And Frank Mir made a great analysis about that he's got a lot on his mind and a lot going on between the drug tests and that it's really going to distract him from 100% concentrating on a fight camp that he needs in a fight of this caliber. So I could see Lesnar getting it, especially if he implements his usual game and takes him to the ground. So I'm pulling for Lesnar. So what do you guys think, Rod?
I don't think anyone could say that the UFC is taking it easy on Brock Lesnar. This guy has only had 7 fights, and he's fought the best of the heavyweight division, and he's considered one of the best. And for someone coming from pro wrestling, you really got to give him credit. As far as this fight goes, it's really tough because you have someone who's so strong in one thing and someone who's so strong in another skill, and you put them together. So it's really all about what Overeem's takedown defense and Brock Lesnar's striking. And Eric, we discussed this, how we both watched over recently the Cain Velasquez-Lesnar fight and agreed that Lesnar actually did a lot better than we thought from the first time viewing it.
Right.
So I do think his stand-up is approved. I do think he can take some shots. It's just how he reacts to those shots. But I think he could weather the storm. I really don't think as well-rounded and as decorated striker as Overeem is, I don't think he has the power and accuracy that maybe a Cain Velasquez had. I don't think he hits harder than Shane Carwin did, and Lesnar was able to take those shots. I think Lesnar's going to take him down. Lesnar's taken down every one of his opponents, and it's going to be hard. Overeem is going to use a lot of energy to get out from Brock Lesnar, and I think in the second round, the gas tank of Overeem is really going to start to get lower, and Lesnar's going to take advantage. So I'm going Lesnar, TKO, second round.
It's a sentiment that I echo. No one can ever say they're taking it easy on Brock Lesnar. You may remember at first in his career, it seemed like half his fights he ended up fighting someone not meant to fight him originally. For instance, when he was supposed to fight Coleman, he ended up fighting Couture, I believe.
And I ended up fighting Keith Haring when he was supposed to fight Coleman.
Okay, yeah, it was a couple times where that's changed up, and every time it's like every opponent they throw at him, from Mir, Herring, Couture, on, etc., it's like every fight you're expecting this to be, oh, come on, Brock, please.
I know. And, you got to think of Overeem. You saw how some of the Strikeforce guys, it's pretty much hit or miss how they do the first time in UFC. Jake Shields hasn't done too well. Nate Diaz has torn it up. Mayhem Miller hasn't done too well. So Overeem as someone who's fought different organizations, and maybe he won't get those UFC jitters, but at the same time, your first fight is Brock Lesnar. This is not your average MMA heavyweight. This is someone who can move as fast as Frankie Edgar. So you can't say they're taking it easy on Alistair, too. And whoever really wins this definitely deserves a shot at Santos.
Well, I believe whoever wins will be number one contender. And even though we're predicting Lesnar winning so far, both of us, it's not like Overeem's not a dangerous opponent. Caligula Ravishing just pointed out in our chat room, Min-Soo Kim, yes, Lesnar's original opponent for his first MMA fight ever was Hungman Choi. Amira, what's your pick for Lesnar Overeem?
Overeem is a more talented striker than you guys seem to think, but I do watch a lot of K1. I recognize that striking for pure Muay Thai is very different from striking when you have to worry about being taken down.
Oh, I agree with you about Overeem. Just look at what he did to Mike Russo.
Like a lot of primarily stand-up fighters, most likely doesn't like to be on his back. We haven't really seen much of that from Overeem, so how he's going to react in that situation is kind of hard to say, but probably going to be a tough fight for him if that's where it ends up.
Let's see what Will Brooks thinks. Do you have any predictions for Lesnar and Overeem?
Pain. I got Overeem in this fight. I think Overeem's stand-up is really going to tell the difference. I love Brock Lesnar. I really do. And I hope he does win. I really do. I got Overeem. Not just because he's Dutch and I'm Dutch and I like the football Dutchman. His stand-up is way superior than, like, Brock's, obviously. And I think it's superior than everybody in the heavyweight division. I mean, yeah, JDS has got a lot of power. And Cain Velasquez's boxing is very crisp. But Overeem's a black belt and does Muay Thai. Come on, that's an actual discipline where a lot of stand-up is, like, taken from. So I got to go with Overeem on this fight. As much as I like Brock, I'm going with AO.
I like both guys. I met Overeem. He's a very nice guy. But with the wrestler like Brock, man, you try to knee him, as soon as one leg comes off the ground, that could be the end. You could be looking at the lights.
I have no idea why I said Mike Russo when I meant Todd Duffy. I am off my game tonight.
I was going to correct you on that. Mike Russo is actually the guy who pretty much knocked Todd Duffy out of the UFC.
Yeah. Todd Duffy lost last year at the K1 Dynamite show in 19 seconds to Overeem. That was a pretty easy win and just really shows what Overeem's capable of. But speaking of Dynamite, that reminds us of New Year's Eve, and coming up on Saturday after Lesnar Overeem will be the Dream New Year Live 2011 in Japan's Saitama Super Arena. A lot is going on this card. There's kickboxing, there's MMA, there's even pro wrestling presented by Inoki's IGF. So, Amira, you wanted to give us a little preview of Dream coming up, airing live on HDNet.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Dream. They're pretty much everything I really like about Japanese MMA. New Year's Eve show is usually one of the most fun shows of the year. Like you said, it has several different types of fighting on it. It's usually done in conjunction with K1, so it's usually just MMA and kickboxing, but this year, yes, there are pro wrestling matches too. There's actually 19 matches on this show, so I'm not going to go through everything here. But Fedor's fighting Satoshi Ishii. Shinya Aoki is defending the Dream Lightweight belt. The awesome Megumi Fuji is fighting Carla Benitez. Looking forward to seeing that. Also, Josh Barnett is in a pro wrestling match. And anyone who saw Josh's Hard Times promo from Strikeforce's open workouts last year should know that Josh does have a background in pro wrestling, because that's really what we're seeing. That should be fun to see him in an actual wrestling match. On the K1 end of things, I'm very happy to see one of my favorites, Yoshihiro Nagashima, who is known as the cosplay kickboxer, and if you watch the show, I'm sure you'll find out why. He's in another mixed rules fight this year where the first round is kickboxing rules and the next ones are MMA. Those are interesting, and there was a hilarious incident with Shinya Aoki in his mixed rules fight with Nagashima last year.
Well deserved.
Yes. I would really recommend checking this out on HDNet, especially if you're not familiar with Japanese MMA, because it's a really different show, and that's nice every once in a while. They have English commentary, so you'll know what's going on. Actually, they have Michael Schiavello on commentary, who I think is just awesome, and if he can't get you excited about a fight, then nobody can.
He's my quick fix to the mute button. I really can't stand him.
Okay. I'm not going to argue that, but I like him. He knows everything about everybody, and he's always very excited to be there. And it's very hard to stay that upbeat for 9 hours, so I give him credit for that. Anyway, it is a long show, and it comes on at like 1 in the morning on New Year's Eve because they're airing it live from Japan. So you probably want to DVR this one if you're interested in it. That way, you'll have it. You can watch it in pieces. If you're a big loser like me and have nothing to do on New Year's Eve, you can watch it all day. Or if you actually have plans, you can watch it when you're hungover on New Year's Day.
Would you say that if you miss Pride FC, you should have been watching Dream a while back?
Yeah, probably the closest thing to Pride. There are some rule differences, but there's also just a different feel to the shows. There's just sort of a kind of the epic feel that Pride had. You'll see that in Dream. There's just the presentation is very different. You see a lot of interesting stuff with graphics, which sounds like very superficial stuff, but it makes a difference. It has just a very different feel to the whole show, and it's, like I said, it's fun to see that sometimes.
I'm glad Shinya Aoki's finally defending his belt. Seems like forever since he's done that. I'm also looking forward to seeing Kazushi Sakuraba return to his roots. Yes, before he was in MMA, he was a pro wrestler. That's before he became the Gracie Killer that we know today, or at least of yesteryear. So it's a pretty interesting card, like Amira said, and We look forward to hearing your recap of that, hopefully next time we're on the air. But for right now, we're going to move on from mixed martial arts and we're going to move into pro wrestling. But before we do that, a lot of people are on the line, so let's go to some calls. Justin in Eagle, Wisconsin.
I'd like to apologize for missing show 2 weeks ago. I had college finals that day.
And it's all right. They're archived on Blog Talk Radio and iTunes and GoFi Live, so you can catch them at any point. But that's if you want to listen to any of our previous shows. Our entire archive, every show we've ever done, is on iTunes and Blog Talk Radio. But what's on your mind, Justin?
Raw that happened last week, I think it shows that WWE is really improving. That week they had the show from Philadelphia. They kind of inadvertently made it a tribute special to the indie fans. Philadelphia, an indie heavy city.
What's so inadvertent about that, you think? Because it's probably very purposeful.
Okay, maybe it was. It just didn't seem purposeful, but I still caught it. They
debut Punk in the Hammerstein for a reason. I'm sure this was no different.
Well, you put it that way. I guess it makes sense. Zack Ryder, they had CM Punk, they had Bryan Danielson coming through the crowd with their championships. They started an ECW chant, and it kind of got me to thinking. Right now, WWE's current championship roster may be the best that they've ever had in their history. Divas champ Beth Phoenix, tag champs Matt Sydal and Kofi Kingston, IC champ Cody Rhodes, US champ Zack Ryder, and two former ROH alumni as world champs. Yeah, do you also think that this is WWE's best championship roster, or if you disagree, can you or anyone else on the panel name a better list of champions in WWE?
Well, I'm sure if I sat down and thought about it, I could probably think of one, but I mean, they're over, but it doesn't exactly strike me as the best that there's ever been. But, I mean, there's been lots of talk about that. So, I mean, like I said, if I sat down and thought about it, also taking into consideration that there's more titles now than there have been at various points in the past. But, again, that's something up for debate. Maybe you want to talk about it on our Facebook group or fan pages or the message board. So you can get the links to all that on WrestlingRoundtable.com. Joining the panel is Orlando O'Neill. Hey, Ollie.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? I just want to throw my 2 cents in for Brock Lesnar, Alistair Overeem. I've been having this debate with all my buddies. Being a pro wrestling fan, Brock is my boy. And every time they want to bring up Overeem and all his knockouts, all I have to say is Brock Lesnar beat Undertaker in Hell in a Cell. That's it. He's winning.
He also beat him at that No Mercy and that biker chain match or whatever by picking Undertaker up in a deadlift when he had the triangle on.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
yeah,
he didn't
Brock
beat
smash
that way.
all the way.
Yeah, so that's cool. You're going to be joining us later for Final Battle.
Yes, definitely.
Excellent.
Great show.
Before we get on to some of the other latest shows, got some poll results for you. We had polls recently on WrestlingRoundtable.com, and the first one up was, we're already talking about him, let's talk about him some more. Will Brock Lesnar quit MMA if he loses to Alistair Overeem? 28% of you said yes, he will quit, and there's seemingly every time he fights in the past year or so a rumor about this. 31% of you said no, he'll quit if he loses 3 in a row. Just so happens that if he does lose to Overeem, he would have 2 in a row, I believe, so could be on the horizon, according to 31% of you. 41% of you, that's the most, number one, 41%, said no, he's in it for the long haul. More optimistic than a lot of other people on the internet, I guess. The other poll was, what does Kane's new mask resemble the most? 14% of you said Casey Jones. 17% said Super Shredder. 2 Ninja Turtle ones right there about Kane's new outer mask, I guess you'd say, because clearly his second mask is 2003-ish. 18% said shit. Very mean of you. 25% said Predator. And number one, 26% of you, the most, voted for what does Kane's new mask resemble the most? A welder. I think that's the one we hear the most. No news segment tonight because in lieu of the news, you can check out the news on WrestlingRoundtable.com. There's tons of it there for you. What I think we'll do instead of the news this time is we'll do headlines because you may notice the scrolling bar at the top of WrestlingRoundtable.com with some of the news headlines. And being that this is our last show of 2011, I thought I'd take a look back at some of the news headlines from 2011 on WrestlingRoundtable.com. Karma pregnant. Eric not the father. China blows men and her TNA gig. Randy Orton gets concussion despite no brain to bruise. TNA brings in indie wrestlers and puts title on another ex-WWE wrestler. Zack Ryder fucked over in Long Island, even with Raw having an extra hour of TV time. UFC main events will be 5 rounds, no matter how boring. Kenta Kobashi determined to die in the ring like Misawa by coming back despite being held together by duct tape and glue. IWC declares they want CM Punk's baby and he might be the second coming of Jesus. Brett Rogers defeats White via KO in first round, wins Strikeforce release and jail time. New Sting gimmick based on other makeup-wearing movie character played by a dead actor. Sin Cara suspended for anabalicas. Alright, I don't know if that's a real Spanish word. I made it up. WWE cuts Selena, Masters, and Kozlov. Gail Kim quits. Selena has 90 days before she can start having sex with the TNA roster. CM Punk returns to WWE after several ROH and indie appearances. Whoops, forget the second half of that. Hendo, TKO, Spado. Kurt Angle arrested for DUI again. Matt Hardy really wants your attention and reassurance. Did you know Ric Flair's a douche? Jeff Hardy does hard time. For only 10 days. Raw roster does what WWE hopes fans don't do, walk out on show. Brock returns to WWE in a video game. James Storm wins TNA title from Angle in a minute at Impact tapings, while Rude couldn't beat Hurt champion in 15 minutes at Bound for Glory pay-per-view. Tyson Tomko addicted real bad to pills. Will he get WWE rehab, or is Scott Hall hogging all the money? Hogan makes good on comeback match, then says stupidest thing possible. TNA title does WCW 2000 style pop potato jumps between beer money. JDS wins heavyweight title from Cain Velasquez in 1 minute 4 seconds of action during a 60-minute show. WWE spoils us by Mick Foley and Bull Buchanan returning in one night. Maurice Greased and Fleeced gets released. OVW is a developmental again. For TNA. R-Truth's push goes up in smoke, suspended for weed. And Daniel Bryan, still World Heavyweight Champion. Those were some of the news headlines this year on WrestlingRoundtable.com. So, WWE had a pay-per-view in Maryland, TLC the other weekend, and as Justin from Eagle, Wisconsin brought up, that really set up the current roster that they have right now. There were some title switches, and one of which in the opener was Zack Ryder, a month too late, I might add, because I listened back to our Survivor Series review recently. That is show number 40, and that is available on iTunes, YouTube, and Go Fight Live, along with Blog Talk Radio. But that show, we talked about Survivor Series, and I really don't think I made it a point enough that, forget Zack Ryder just being on the show. They had been building up this U.S. title win for months. This was still in the fans' minds an A show, Survivor Series, a show with The Rock on it that popped the buy rate up from the slump that it's been in. And a lot of eyes were on it. Fans demanded it. It's in New York. Zack Ryder definitely should have won the U.S. title that night. I'm sticking by that. But anyway, maybe a month late, but better late than never, I suppose. And he defeated Dolph Ziggler with the Rough Rider to win the U.S. title finally.
I love Zack Ryder. I'm all for it. I mean, yeah, he should have done it a little sooner, granted, but the fact that he gets the title now is great. And I'm tired of people saying, is he being overpushed? Hell no, he's not being overpushed. He wasn't on TV 2.5 months ago. So no, I feel like they can't push him like too much right now. The only thing they can do too much is give him like title wins, the WWE title, which was way too much. The U.S. title was perfect. It also gave Ziggler a little bit more character than outside of what Vicky Guerrero does. Because you're going to build him to be the next big heel, you got to make him piss people off, and this is how they're doing it. So I like it all around.
Big Show ended up re-winning, actually, the former WCW title, the Big Gold Belt, for the third time. I think it's actually the first time he did it in WWE, but he beat Mark Henry with a knockout punch in their chairs match on that show. But he also went on to have the shortest World Heavyweight title reign ever, because Mark Henry attacked him afterwards, and after a DDT on the chair, who runs out but Daniel Bryan, and this time it was for real. He won the World Heavyweight title, and everyone rejoiced on the internet. How did you feel about it, Will?
I loved it. I'm a Daniel Bryan fan. Speaking of which, I finally watched the Wrestling Road Diaries last night. The whole thing.
Oh.
I liked it. Cole Caban's a funny-ass dude. I liked it. The only thing that would have been kind of cool is, what was the name of his old finisher?
The cattle mutilation.
Thank you. If you would have done that to the Big Show, that would have been badass. But, no, I'll take what we can get. I like the fact he's champion. And it makes it look like Big Show's going to turn heel, and they're going to face him. If Daniel Bryan can beat Big Show, that's going to make him a lot bigger in a lot of people's minds. So, go Daniel Bryan. I'm all for it.
I actually really expect that to happen, although I'm pretty sure if he does tap out Big Show, it would be with the LaBelle Lock. Corey, you have been a Bryan Danielson / Daniel Bryan fan for longer than some people have even been watching him. Of course, going back to his ROH days, which his last ROH set of shows was covered in the Wrestling Road Diaries, as Will mentioned, and he's been in WWE ever since, except for those few months that he had to be let go. But he did come right back and got right into the swing of things, and I know you've been very critical of WWE's booking of Daniel Bryan, and I really disagree with that, but all the same, I'm pretty sure you're happy about him winning the title, so what do you think about it?
I was floored. I was floored that he won the title. When I saw the clips of how he did it, I was even more surprised. I kind of knew he was going to cash in early, but I didn't think he was going to cash in over the Big Show. That was a swerve I just didn't see coming. And while a lot of people are saying that this means Big Show's going to turn heel, I was actually wondering if they're going to turn Bryan heel, because it does seem like a heel tactic to cash in over your TV friend.
But isn't that the problem, that cashing in Money in the Bank, and this is why I've never been a real fan of it, really just makes it, in my eyes, too much like the 24/7 rule for the hardcore title, whatever. It works for Edge back in 2006 because he's a sneaky heel, and that's the opportunistic gimmick that he had. But everybody else, heel or babyface, outside of Rob Van Dam, who's the only person who said, I'm going to challenge so-and-so on a show and stuck to it, because, of course, Bryan Danielson didn't do it for WrestleMania this year. But regardless of heel, facedom, whatever, that's the way it ends up being, isn't it?
Usually, and it's exactly like the 24/7 rule. You're absolutely right. I'm curious to see what happens after this, because apparently a lot of wrestling fans, even diehard WWE fans, have brought up, and I wanted to ask you personally, Eric, that there has been a Money in the Bank curse, where seemingly a lot of the Money in the Bank winners, after they win specifically the SmackDown title, they run into a stream of bad luck. When CM Punk cashed in the last time, what happened? As soon as he dropped the belt, he was back on the low cards and he was injured. Ken Anderson didn't even get the chance to cash it in, and he's in TNA. That's bad luck. Edge is retired due to multiple injuries. Each of his title reigns didn't exactly end pretty. Do you believe that this curse is real? And if so, do you think it could hit Bryan or anybody else who gets next year's Money in the Bank?
Of course not. Humans are pattern-seeking animals, and they see patterns wherever they want to. It's just superstitious bullshit. I don't believe any of that crap. But I wish him the best of luck, and like I said, obviously they're going to be programming him with the Big Show in the at least immediate future, and I expect good things out of that. But we have a lot of people on the line, and I want to go to some of these calls because it seems like we have a lot of new callers this time, and hopefully they want to talk about the TLC pay-per-view or maybe even Final Resolution, because we did not cover that on our last show. And maybe I'm just silly bringing up TNA because I don't know about anybody else, but right now it seems like they get more and more irrelevant by the day. We've got a 908 number.
Hello, Eric.
Yes.
I got one question. What do you
Okay.
think about the news on a movie being done about He Who We Do Not Speak Of?
I'm glad you asked about that. And what's your name, by the way, and where are you from?
My name is Sergio Romero.
We have talked about serious issues on this show before, and one of the things that we started off on was Chris Benoit and the incident that happened years ago. And I have talked to wrestlers. In fact, a wrestler that we've already mentioned on the show, I don't want to mention his name, but I have talked to wrestlers on the show before about their health because I was concerned. We do care about people here. In fact, the second season, we ended with a whole big speech I gave about Jeff Hardy and his drug problems and how fans should be there for the wrestlers too. So when it comes to the Chris Benoit story, I'm glad you asked that, Sergio, because a lot of people jump to the conclusion that, well, firstly, I should point out that the latest Chris Benoit script, or whatever you want to call for the book Ring of Hell, seems like it's going to be a dramatic recreation. Whereas initially, I think the first script that was optioned earlier this year, which was on Irv Mushnick's book, Chris and Nancy, that I would think would be more of a documentary style. In fact, I would really hope that they would both come out in conjunction together, because they would be both dramatic and real documentary complements to each other. Now, what I was getting to with the Ring of Hell script or whatever, people jump to the conclusion that, well, it's just Hollywood cashing in on someone's death and it's disgusting and blah, blah, blah. Well, granted, we know, just like wrestling or Hollywood, anything else is a business, so that's the idea, to make money, of course. But making a general blanket statement like that, doesn't that discount the idea that there are actual human beings that work in these industries that might have good intentions in mind? Maybe the people, and I'm not saying this for sure because I don't know, but maybe the people putting this together are actually doing it to get people aware of things and to help out. So I'm not against it. I look forward to seeing what happens with it. That remains to be seen. Right now, what I'd like to do is introduce a wrestler that I've worked with. She has wrestled now all over the world, which is really exciting. And you may know her initially as Jumpin' Jamilia Craft from Pro Wrestling Respect, Ring of Honor, and Shimmer, but she now goes by the name Jenny Rose.
Hey, buddy, how are you?
Oh, I've had better nights. I can tell you that. A lot of people may know you from Pro Wrestling Respect or Ring of Honor, and et cetera, et cetera. And right off the bat, I wanted to ask you, because it was really great to be running a wrestling show with the Roundtable, essentially, because we've been a circle of friends forever. We've been doing sort of creative things with video or music and things like that, but it was great to work in conjunction together, performing an actual live wrestling show and various different tasks we were doing, and I was very happy to be doing it with this roster of people, mostly students from the ROH Wrestling Academy. And the first show that we did, which was inaugural the other year, which, by the way, is available to download on Go Fight Live or GFL.TV, and you can get the DVD at either WrestlingRoundtable.com or ProWrestlingRespect.com. But you debuted your first ever pro wrestling match that night, and of all people, it was against Mischief. So they really threw you into the fire on that one. Luckily, there were a lot of people there supporting you, and I thought it ended up being one of the highlights of the event. So you want to tell us about how your career started?
I started training when I was 17 at the Ring of Honor Wrestling Academy. The trainers there were Delirious and Daisy Hayes. I think they're excellent trainers as far as teaching you everything you need to learn before you go out there on the independent scene. Yeah, I made my debut January 24th. It was like something that comes out of Rocky versus a champion. That's how I felt wrestling against Mischief. She was the Shimmer champion at the time. I also had about 50 family and friends in the audience, so still to this day one of my favorite shows.
Yeah, mine too. From there, you got a few spots on ROH on HDNet and a few other ROH shows. You progressed also to Shimmer. So you want to tell us about your ROH and Shimmer experiences? I
started wrestling for those companies at a young age. I mean, I still am young, but I didn't expect to ever compete against crowds that big. I was always nervous. Even to this day, I still get nervous. There's something special about being able to wrestle people who've been wrestling for years, you know, and I'm just starting out, still so new. But I worked hard, and I tried my best in every single match. I may not have won them all, but I certainly tried my best. My first match at Shimmer was probably my favorite. I wrestled with Mercedes Martinez. She gave me a hug after the match, and it made me feel really good about myself. I think that's my favorite match from Shimmer.
Yeah, Mercedes is pretty good, too, I think. She's,
at
least on the independent level, one of the top of the line as far as women's wrestlers go. From there, you went over to Japan.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I'm really interested to find out about. Firstly, how did that even come about?
Pro Wrestling Vienna is owned by Kyoko Inoue. It's a brand new Joshi company in Japan. They were scouting wrestlers to bring over from America to Japan, and they contacted Suma Sakai, and Suma Sakai sent Deanna a list of girls who she thought would do well there. And a few girls who went over there were Annie Social, Rain, and Rosie Lotta Love. from TNA.
So that's where she ended up.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I got the opportunity right after the last Respect show. I went in contact with Sum Sakai about going over there and living over there and being able to train and compete for Deanna. Japan is the best experience of my life. I loved it. I strive on hard work, and in Japan, that's all it is hard work. If you work hard, you get what you put in, and I love everything about it.
Pro Wrestling Diana, isn't that the first wrestling promotion named after the princess?
They actually pronounce it Deanna. So it's kind of funny because I still say Diana. It's just, but hey, you know, they pronounce it like that, but it is still Diana.
Well, then you went on to Happy Hour, as it's called, promoted by...
Happy Hour!
Oh, okay. Happy
like
Hour!
There you go.
I guess that's how you do it.
Yes.
Promoted by Hikaru?
Hikaru.
That's what I said, Hikaru. And I found it very interesting seeing you in these different places because last I knew of, and maybe I was just out of the loop, Joshi seemed like it was on its last legs in Japan, and then all of a sudden there's these different promotions that pop up. And then you also did some training, not just at the Deanna Dojo, but also 01. Obviously, I want to find out more about that, but what's the biggest difference between Japan, at least as far as women's wrestlers, and America?
The work ethic, I'd have to say. There's a few American girls who actually train very hard. I know you know who they are. You could just tell, and then, but like it seems like everyone in Japan trains so hard, and you know, they treat it as a sport and take it very seriously. And that's the biggest difference I noticed, is just the work ethic. Every match I've had in Japan has definitely been my best. I
have an interesting theory about that, and I've posed it to a few wrestlers who have been to Japan, and I guess it never occurred to them. So let's see if you have any different insight into that. But my question was, there's such an obvious work ethic and really skill difference between a lot of these Joshi Japanese women's wrestlers and a lot of what you see in American female wrestlers. And part of me just feels that a lot of it probably has to do with the idea that they're easing up on it to a degree recently in the past few years or past few decades, but historically, women have always been second-class citizens in Japan. Men are always number one. And it would seem to me that a lot of these, especially the old school, like Bull Nakano and Dump Matsumoto, that's my favorite fucking wrestling.
Dump Matsumoto. I wrestle her at Happy Hour. She killed me.
What a name.
Oh.
But anyway,
wow.
Aja Kong and those sort of ilk especially, but it would seem to me that a lot of these Joshi women wrestlers, almost it would be as if to even be in the boys club, you've got to be like 1,000 times better than what you'd expect. Like, they have to be good. Megumi Kudo is one of my favorite women's wrestlers of all time, and she, as pretty as she was doing fucking barbed wire exploding matches in FMW and stuff. And you don't see women doing that in America, really, outside of, like, a few hardcore niche sort of things, like, I don't know, maybe like IWA Mid-South or some shit. I don't know. But do you think that could be a factor in why Joshi is the way it is, the athletics? Do you think that that's part of the reason why Joshi women's wrestlers are the way they are, that Japan has been treating women like second-class citizens for most of their history, so to even be in the boys' club, so to speak, they have to be good?
You know, I'm not sure, maybe. I mean, being in the locker room with Joshi legends, they take the sport very seriously, and I think just the Japanese mentality is to put your all into everything you do, and that's just second nature for them. Everyone I met there just works extremely hard. I think there it's more of life. Wrestling's more of your life, but here, as far as my experience, you know, people have second jobs. A lot of people I know, wrestling's not their life, but in Japan, you make a living as a wrestler, so for them, they have more time to put all their time into it, whereas in America, I know very few people can actually make a living out of it.
I like in America, they always say that, oh, well, my real job.
Yeah. You know what I mean? But in Japan, people like Kyokanui, Ito, they have their little businesses. I mean, Chick owns a bar. Ito-san has a restaurant. I mean, it's not like it's a second job. It's kind of something fun to do on the side. They make a living off of wrestling over there. I don't think it's like we have to work harder. It's just second nature for them to work harder. That's just how they are. Maybe. I really have no idea, but that's my theory on the situation.
So what's in the future for Jenny Rose? I know you're welcome back to Japan, but is that in the works, or are you going to be doing things domestically?
We'll see. I'm enjoying right now just being with my family. I was in Japan for about 5 months, so right now I'm enjoying the holidays. Yeah, they contacted me and asked when I wanted to come back. They're a brand new company. They have a lot of things. The girls they brought over the first time were the first experiment, you know what I'm saying? So they have a lot of things they need to get together for themselves in order to better the company. Once they get everything situated, I don't think I'll ever be happier wrestling anywhere else other than Japan. I miss it already. I really can't wait to get over there and keep having matches. Because like I said, every match I've had over there has been my best. I love the training over there. There's nothing better than being able to train like 8 hours a day, every day. You know, it's very tiring, but I love it.
Well, this was your first radio interview ever, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think there's another radio interview I'd rather do than for you, man.
Oh, well, thanks a lot. That makes me feel a lot better, and I need it tonight.
Oh, man, I hope so, man.
You're welcome back anytime, and we all wish you luck in your future career.
Oh, thanks so much, man.
All right, thanks a lot. Jenny Rose, formerly Jamilia Craft of Pro Wrestling Respect, possibly back to Japan. We'll see. We'll keep you updated on WrestlingRoundtable.com. You're on with Wrestling Roundtable. Name and location.
This is Sergio again. From North Brunswick, New Jersey.
Jersey guy.
Yep. What do you want to see change for WWE in 2012?
Oh, wow. That's a pretty loaded question. They're taking a step in the right direction, at least as far as WrestleMania, because I'm fully expecting next week this Jericho comeback. I know he's denying it on Twitter because he has to or whatever, but I'm pretty sure they're targeting Punk and Jericho. Rock will be wrestling Cena. Those two matches in particular are not Triple H Undertaker. And by that I mean, yes, they are bringing back some established names, but they're putting them against different people, which is great. If Undertaker and Triple H were wrestling different people, that'd be awesome. Big Show can be relegated to his match with Shaq. That's great. But I do like the idea, especially if they win, of Punk and Cena going over the established names like Rock and Jericho, because we've been saying for years on this show already, the time to pass the torch was a while back. So at least they're finally making steps in the right direction. Royce in Pomona, California. What's up?
I kind of want to talk about last week in wrestling. I mean, just mainly WWE. And, well, if anyone saw my post on Facebook will know how I feel about Daniel Bryan and Punk being the champions of the company. And, well, at least the right side, I guess you could say, is new people, even though it could be other people. And I kind of took my aggression out through virtual reality, having Brock beat those guys in handicap matches. So that's okay, but I just kind of want to ask you, do you think, maybe obviously not with Bryan, but do you think they're really going to go like full-blown Punk, or do you think they have already? It seems like they like him, like, and they obviously gave him a huge contract and bust and all that. You think they're really going to go like full-blown, like with how he kind of did with Orton back in 2009? But that
Orton, no, because Orton was pegged from the beginning. Like even when he was in OVW, just like Cena, they knew we're going to do something with this guy. Punk has had a very different route in his career, and I'm glad you brought that up because we have talked about Benoit tonight, and the one thing I keep hearing, and I don't understand why, that picture with Punk and Danielson with the two belts, right? And everyone's jumping on, this Eddie and Benoit. Firstly, I don't know why they would want to be compared to those two, knowing how they ended up. But, and it's not unrelated to their wrestling choices in their career. So I'm making that point there. But what they forget about that moment, quote unquote, at WrestleMania 20 is just how short-lived it really was. The first quarter of 2004 was really great for WWE. The pay-per-views were off the charts, at least in the main event, and the cards were generally pretty good too. And clearly it's not a coincidence with the kind of people that were in there at the time. I don't know if it necessarily equaled a ton of money. Eddie would have been a bigger draw than Benoit was anyway, but that's not to say Benoit wasn't over. To a degree he was. Obviously not to a Cena or even Shawn Michaels, whatever type level, but enough. That being said, okay, so it's mid-March, like March 14th, 2004. These two guys get their big moments. This is the bone thrown to all the guys in the back who really appreciate the skill that these guys had and the internet and all that other sort of style stuff. Fast forward a year later, and it's nothing like that. So people may enjoy Punk and Danielson now while they can, fine. But let's see where these guys are in a year, and then we'll know if this movement is really true. And maybe it's going to be completely different people. Maybe there will be new people in the main event, but not those two. We'll see. I think Punk has gone farther and probably will go farther than Danielson has. And you make a good point, because there has been some talk about that on our Facebook page about whether they've gone as far with Punk as they will go. It's certainly possible, and if that is true, is it really that bad? He's won the title 3 times in big...
Shelton, who I thought was more deserving.
Well, that's fine enough, but he did go further than that, right? He's won the title 3 times in main events this year, at least in the first 2 times, SummerSlam and Money in the Bank, and Survivor Series, he won it clean in the middle of the ring in Madison Square Garden on an A show. So I think they've done pretty well with it so far. He's been in like every Raw main event and segment, blah, blah, blah. He's gotten tons of time. He's got his face all over. So I don't think it's a failure per se at all. But I don't know how much further they're going to go.
Okay.
All right. Well, I guess we'll move on to Ring of Honor's Final Battle 2011 pay-per-view that happened this past Friday from the Hammerstein Ballroom in New York City. Attending it was most of the Roundtable. So up first, I wanted to see what you guys thought about the undercard, because this show went real long, way long, longer than it really should have. And it seemed like people were really into the first half of the show, at least. Maybe the matches went a little long. They could have trimmed a few minutes off each or whatever, but especially in the opener, for instance, Michael Elgin, who I've talked about many times on the show, has been doing real well, defeated T.J. Perkins. Perkins is a guy I'm a fan of. I think he's got a very interesting story in pro wrestling as far as his career goes, because much like Mysterio, he's a young guy, but started so long ago. It's like, wow, he's been wrestling 11 years so far? And he's only in his mid-20s? Wow. And he hasn't really had too much of a prominent role in Ring of Honor just yet. Someone I read today said it well, that he needs direction, which is fine. But he's under contract now, so maybe that's in the works. But I really enjoyed their opening match, especially the plancha to the outside spot where Elgin caught him upside down or whatever and then rammed him into the guardrail. He's got very good Dr. Death Steve Williams style-esque stuff. Except, of course, Dr. Death never came off the top rope to the floor with a moonsault like Elgin can. So what'd you think of the opener, Will?
You guys told me to watch out for T.J. Perkins. I'm like, okay, fine, I'll watch the guy. Holy shit, does he have a future? I thought the best spot in the match was he jumped off the top rope and Elgin caught him in a vertical suplex. Like, caught him in midair in a vertical suplex, held him up, and then dropped him. That was one of the greatest spots I've ever seen live. Holy shit. But you're right about Perkins and Elgin. They're both pretty good fighters.
Same as well, that spot where TJP came off the top rope and he basically like went to spear Elgin, and Elgin caught him in midair for a vertical suplex. I thought that spot was awesome. I thought it was a great choice for an opener to start the show, because these two guys can go. I think if they were put into a main event spot, I think they could do even better things than what they did last Friday. But I thought it was a great match, great opener.
In the next match, Jimmy Rave returned to Ring of Honor after a little absence. I think it's been a couple of years, but he took on the current crown jewel of the embassy, Tommaso Ciampa. Ciampa getting somewhat of a push in Ring of Honor. Well, not somewhat, clearly, but we'll see where it goes is what I meant. But Jimmy Rave, I thought he looked awesome. And I mean in the physical aesthetic sense, because when I saw that first promo back on the video wire with the beard and the haircut, I thought, wow, Jimmy looks awesome. Definitely looks, I don't know if more mature is the right word, but he ends up losing to Ciampa. Don't know if it was a one-shot deal or what, but he got a decent reaction, at least from the crowd, although I think he violated the rule that he wasn't allowed to do the Styles Clash anymore as per the stipulation from when he lost to AJ Styles in 2005, but I guess no one paid attention to that anymore, Orlando. So what'd you think of Jimmy Rave coming back?
I thought it was pretty good. The Clash of Style was but I thought they put on a pretty decent match. It was pretty funny when Rave put him in the Rave Clash, the whole crowd started chanting AJ Styles, and it's like, Jesus Christ, were they not watching ROH a couple of years ago? It's the Rave Clash. But I thought it was a pretty decent match, and it was good to see Jimmy back. He looked in pretty good shape, like how you were saying.
Anytime a guy from the embassy wins, it's a good thing, because it means we get more Prince Nana, and you can never have too much Prince Nana in your life.
All right. TV champion Jay Lethal retained the belt in a three-way against El Generico and Mike Bennett. Mike Bennett coming out with Maria Kanellis. And yes, we got the interview with Maria afterwards, but this was her ROH debut. She's been coming to a few shows, but this was her first on camera. Man, her body was fucking banging. It looked incredible. And the reaction was great. I loved the CM Punk chants that Bennett responded to by, as someone I saw today put it hilariously, mouth raping Maria. But I think some people expected Bennett to get the TV title here because he was getting a push towards the TV title last year or so, maybe earlier this year, and didn't get there. But not to be. Lethal retains.
I have 3 words for you. Maria, Maria, Maria. And that's all that matters. But no, it was a good match. I thought Bennett played a really good heel role in it. Generico obviously is over as shit. Everybody loves Jay Lethal. It was a good match. For that Maria interview, I was actually in on that interview and did nothing. I just made sure I was in the room with Maria at least one time during that night so I could say I was in the same room as Maria.
I thought it was a good match. I was disappointed that Mike Bennett didn't go over. Nowadays in ROH, it's really hard to get heels over because the ROH crowd like bad guys, and it's really hard to have a really good bad guy. And I think Mike Bennett is that good of a bad guy to actually make you hate him. He's a really believable heel, and I think Maria played a great role with him. I think she played a great heel valet. Bennett should have went over, used his little heel tactics or whatnot. But other than that, I thought it was really entertaining. Generico, as usual, hits all of his big spots. Lethal's over. And they all had great chemistry together. They've been working together for months and months now. I was just disappointed Bennett didn't go over.
Yeah, actually, I'm with you, Orlando. I think he should have won too. But at the same time, though, does it just me, or does Mike Bennett look like Ted DiBiase's twin brother?
Little bit. And
I can't
he's
believe
real huge in person.
Yeah, dude, he was cool as hell, but yeah, big-ass dude.
Kevin Steen is now reinstated in Ring of Honor as per the match stipulation. He defeated Steve Corino in essentially a no disqualification match. Package pile driver through 4 chairs that he was standing on, something like that. I love the spot at the end where he hit that package pile driver and Jimmy Jacobs had to reluctantly do that very slow 3 count he really didn't want to do. I like that a lot. Steve Corino dyeing his hair blonde like his old ECW days, and even though seemed like half this match was setting up some spots with the guardrails or chairs or whatever, definitely got a great reaction from the crowd. Steen's back. Your thoughts, Orlando?
Nothing but great news for ROH. This man has been working wonders elsewhere this year, and I'm glad that he's back full-time. When I first heard about this match, I was kind of skeptical. I was like, Steen and Corino, I don't know how good it's going to be. But, man, without a doubt, this was the match of the night. I know they had a lot of spots to set up, but for me, the match flowed greatly. Some of the spots were pretty damn brutal. Corino set up the barricade in the ring on top of chairs, and then he superplexed Steve Corino off the top rope. I thought that was pretty badass. And then they set up a table across the edge of the ring in the barricade with chairs on top, and he threw Steen off of that through that. It was just really brutal. I thought it was the best match on the card, and the crowd was hot for it the whole match.
I thought the match was great. I understand why they did it before the intermission, but this was like the hottest match of the night. They probably should have saved it for later or something, because it seemed like it was the match the crowd reacted to the most and was most looking forward to. Being out there firsthand and seeing Generico go through that table firsthand in front of my face, holy shit, that was kind of scary. Because that power driver is nothing to joke about. Kevin Steen just mowing through everybody. It was like, holy shit. Like, I'm just playing security. I'm trying to, make sure nobody gets hurt. And I'm just like, holy shit, how the hell am I going to stop this motherfucker? He's kicking everyone else's ass. What the hell am I going to do? Like, all 5 roundtable guys can, get a hold of him.
Stay out the way. That's all we have to do.
When he's in the ring, I'm staying the fuck out of the way, too, man. But carrying Generico back in the ambulance, man, that was kind of scary.
Then we went to intermission. And unfortunately, it seemed like the show took a turn for the worse in terms of length. I think the general feeling was that the tag gauntlet went way too long. Maybe it would have been better compartmentalized instead of being little segments of individual matches as maybe a 4-way or some sort of match like that to get things rolling faster. I mean, the individual segments I thought were good. I like Caprice Coleman and Cedric Alexander. I think they're a pretty good tag team. Bravados, of course, on their way to Pro Wrestling Noah now. But it ended up with the Young Bucks defeating the All Night Express because really Rhett Titus's knee played a lot into that match. I was reminded of the Rockers Power and Glory match from the opener of SummerSlam 1990, where Michaels, especially if you watch it back now, he's clearly limping on the way down the aisle. They do a spot right at the beginning where Hercules nails Michaels with the chain in the knee to take him out of the match, and then it's essentially a handicap match with Jannetty wrestling against Roma and Hercules by himself. That's pretty much what happened here, where Kenny King had to do the brunt of the work. Rhett Titus came in a little later. Future Shock was, of course, in there before them, and they're always good. But it ended up with the Young Bucks hitting their impressive high spots, including the more bang for your buck for the win. But, like I said, I think it went a little long.
I liked it. I liked all the tag teams they had, but I gotta admit, though, like, some of the spots, yeah, they were cool. They were so, like, long and thought out and contrived. It was kind of like, almost made it a little hard for me to enjoy them. Like, wait, why would the guy go left and then right, then back up and wait, what? Honestly, I liked the match. Like, the Gauntlet match was kind of cool. The only thing I didn't like about the ending was, like, the All Night Express was, they should have treated it like the Rockers and Power and Glory at SummerSlam 90, where Shawn Michaels was just, like, legit hurt on the outside the entire match.
Right.
Mark Jannetty carried it. They should have done that same thing with Kerry King. That's why I thought it would have been better, and it would have sold his injury a lot better, too.
You mean Red?
They did that. Yeah, they would have sold Red's injury a lot better if they had done that. Had him just, like, injured from the beginning, like, sitting on the apron the whole time. I think that would have been a little bit better. But otherwise, I thought it was a good match. I enjoyed watching the tag teams from ROH. They always entertain.
Red will be getting surgery for his meniscus tomorrow, so hope that goes well. Orlando, how do you feel about the tag on?
I thought the match went a little too long. I actually would have liked it better if the Bravados went over the All Night Express. I thought that could have gave a little bump to the Bravados since they've been on a losing streak, but I guess since they're going away to Noah, it makes more sense for the Young Bucks to do it. But I think they should have finished the match with the Young Bucks and Future Shock. The end of the Young Bucks All Night Express, everybody kind of figured that the Young Bucks would win since everybody knew Rhett was injured. So I think if it would have been Young Bucks and Future Shock to finish the match, it would have been more up in the air, and the fans probably would have been a lot more into it.
Plus, you think the styles would have meshed a little better?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Up next was Roderick Strong and the mystery opponent, so to speak, because the originally booked wrestler could not appear when the date got changed by the Manhattan Center, and they needed to come up with another solution, and it really just worked out perfectly, as usually is the case when people come back to Ring of Honor, that Chris Hero's WWE contract offer was taken back. Some places are reporting that it was due to high levels of testosterone, but I know people that swear Hero's never touched a steroid in his life. But then again, that doesn't necessarily mean steroids either, so who knows what happened there. As you mentioned with the Wrestling Road Diaries before, Will, part of the drama in that documentary, so to speak, is Danielson trying to get through his medical exams for WWE with his liver enzymes and whatnot. So lots of things can go wrong there. They're very thorough with their testing now. So who knows? He could end up there soon. He hasn't signed with Ring of Honor, so I don't know if this is a one-time deal or not, but I was pretty surprised to read so many negative reviews about the match online, because Hero coming back you think people would be really up for. They've had several matches in the past, Hero and Roderick have, but it seemed to not resonate with a lot of the, at least, viewing audience on the internet. Now, there were audio issues throughout the night, so the thing that we constantly read and hear, I've heard from people who have watched the broadcast, that you couldn't hear the crowd. Everyone thought the crowd was dead. And I didn't really get the feeling throughout the night, guys, being there, that the crowd actually was dead. I guess it just seemed like the internet audience couldn't hear it, per se, because certainly on a lot of the elbows and whatnot that people were reacting at least to that. But Roderick wins after interference. It did seem kind of weird, Hero essentially playing the face, or maybe the de facto face, with Truth Martini interfering and everything. But all the same, Roderick wins.
I think a lot of people were more pissed off the fact that Hero lost. You know what I mean? When a guy like him returns and everybody likes him, it's sort of like they think he should go over. And I'm thinking that's not always the case, especially when the guy doesn't have a contract signed. Plus, you want to keep Roderick Strong in the main event picture. You don't want to have him lose on the pay-per-view to a guy who was there for just one night. I don't have a complaint with the match. I thought the match was solid. I mean, it wasn't the best match on the card, but it was a solid match. And I like Chris Hero, so it worked for me.
I thought it was a solid match. Kind of felt like they were going through the motions, because I know they wrestled each other a shitload of times. The crowd pops for Roddy's chops and Hero's elbows. Other than that, it didn't feel special. Like usually, if somebody throws out an open challenge and it's a big surprise, the crowd did go crazy when Hero first came out, but after that, it kind of lost its luster. I don't know.
Right.
It was a good match, but I know they could have did better.
Well, something else that fizzled was the next match, and that was the tag title match with the Briscoes and Wrestling's Greatest Tag Team. Now, not to have this show appear completely insensitive to wrestlers' health, one of the things that have been talked about a lot, at least in regards to this match and really the show in general that I've seen people talking about, is unprotected chair shots to the head. Of course, we have spoken out against that, at least I have. That's in regard to Ring of Honor, too. Now, I'm seeing stuff like Sinclair needs to get their act together and ban this and everything. Well, maybe. I don't think it's something that's so proactive in the sense that they go out and Cornette or Sinclair or whoever demand that these guys do that. I'm sure a lot of them do it on their own. That being said, should they step in and say something? Probably. Do I know that they haven't? No. It would seem to be the case, though, as this keeps happening. I don't know if it was too overabundant in this particular show. Maybe it was. That's just a side note on this whole match, because I guess they were going for a double turn with Wrestling's Greatest Tag Team pretty much becoming heels because they're seemingly disliked by Ring of Honor's audience right now, whereas the Briscoes are cheered. And especially after that cosmetically pleasing promo from last week, I didn't think there was any way that anyone would cheer Wrestling's Greatest Tag Team after listening to that, because there was a lot of truth in what the Briscoes said, and that's really the type of thing that connects with people. So that being said, there was a lot of weird stuff, because if they were doing the double turn, how does Shelton come and do the heroic comeback from the rib injury sort of stuff? I don't know. It seemed like the fans really lost interest at some point in this match when they're going, oh, with the 2x4 and pretty much just dismissing what they're trying to accomplish. The finish was the Doomsday Device. Jay Briscoe and Mark win the record-setting 7th tag title reign for Ring of Honor. They won the belts back. So what'd you think of that whole thing, Will Brooks? At this point in the show, I know it was starting to feel way too long.
Yeah, the match went on kind of long. I mean, I understand why the crowd was pro Briscoe and anti-World's Greatest Tag Team, but I thought the match was okay itself. Again, just like you said, by this point, we were already there for 3 hours already? It was kind of like
something like that, yeah.
And the thing I thought was hilarious, though, I was actually in the balcony in the back watching it with Reno's kid, Colby. And it's funny as hell when they put out the 2x4 on the board and everybody was cheering, oh, USA, USA. He didn't get it. I had to explain to him who Hacksaw Jim Duggan was and why they were doing it. And wow. It was kind of fun. I was thinking, dude, don't you want to be a pro wrestler? Shouldn't you know who Hacksaw Jim Duggan is? Like, it's like one of those names you come across at least once in your life. Like, who's that?
You would be shocked at the amount that people getting into wrestling now, or wrestling students now, don't know about their own sport. And I know at the Ring of Honor school, at least, they try to implement some sort of testing or history learning sort of stuff, at least at the beginning, just to get some little basic knowledge of wrestling down. But you also have to remember the age group of a lot of kids that are getting into wrestling now. They started watching wrestling around the Monday Night War sort of time. So if it didn't happen on Raw and Nitro in 98, they really don't have a lot of insight or concept of what happened before that. And I really think of all time periods for that to be inexcusable would be now, in the age of DVDs and the internet and YouTube. There's so much access to stuff now. It's just got to be a matter of wanting to learn and that thirst for knowledge. So I'm not completely shocked by that per se, but the fact that he's Carino's kid is kind of surprising, being that you'd think he would have probably run into Duggan at some sort of convention or show or something. Orlando, what'd you think of that?
They could have done the double turn a whole lot better. In the beginning, I was kind of confused because it kind of felt like Benjamin and Haas were just being very aggressive instead of being heels. I thought they should have just attacked them right off the bat and just show no mercy, which they kind of did later on in the match. And it was kind of weird because Haas was playing the heel role perfectly, giving the crowd the finger and responding to the crowd. We didn't really see Benjamin doing that much. And then, how you were saying, Benjamin kind of played the babyface role when the Briscoes were attacking his ribs and whatnot. Other than that, I think it was good, but it went on way too long. And yeah, it felt that the whole timing of the show during that match.
Right.
But they definitely made the right decision by putting the Briscoes over, because they're over over his shit right now within ROH.
If Jim Cornette's ain't smart, I would make World's Greatest Tag Team, make the heels, and just cut promos like, we'll just use you guys as a launching pad to get back in WWE or TNA. Fuck Ring of Honor, do stuff like that. Get the crowd really pissed off at them, you know?
That would make a lot more sense than what they're doing now. But who knows? Hopefully this is the start of something good for them, because I felt like their tag reign for the year was kind of stale. I mean, they had good matches, but nothing too spectacular. So hopefully this is the start of a better thing for World's Greatest Tag Team.
It was about 11 p.m. or so when the main event finally started, and boy, did it go long. Now, Davey Richards was making his, I believe, third title defense
since getting June. The title.
Yeah, and being champion since the end of June 26th, this is only his third defense, and it was a rematch from the man he won the belt from. I'm seeing a lot of criticism of this Eddie Edwards-Davey Richards match, that it was pretty much exactly the same as the first one. Personally, I prefer the first one. And really, it doesn't have too much to do with the run-ins, although I find it amazingly hilarious how, yet still in 2011, I'm still thinking about WCW and how if they do something bad, it's the worst thing ever and stupid, but everyone else does it and it's okay. This latest example being, I flashed back, you may remember, Orlando, to Mayhem 99, the first Mayhem pay-per-view, which was the first...
Jeff Jarrett and Sting and all that.
No. You're thinking of Havoc 2000. I was referring to Bret Hart and you, we do not speak of, Chris Benoit, in the tournament final for the world title. Now, you would think people would be praising Vince Russo because this was his first originally booked pay-per-view that he came up with the card by himself, for doing what no one else had done in WCW before that, putting Chris Benoit in a main event, putting Bret Hart in the main event and winning the title in Canada. But no, people just got hung up on, but Dean Malenko ran in and the Outsiders ran in and blah, blah, blah. Well, aren't these the same type of people that watch ROH now and cheer this strong-style bullshit? Didn't this match have Roderick Strong reinserting himself, unwelcome it's seemingly, into the title picture by doing a run-in this match, and then there's this big whole thing ringside with Dan Severn carrying Truth Martini off like a woman and whatever the hell. Well, what's different from the Mayhem thing I just mentioned? Isn't it the same idea?
I thought the whole running thing was perfect. It kind of felt like Survivor Series 94, how they had Chuck Norris to ward off the $1 Million Corporation, because Dan Severn just started whooping ass against the House of Truth, and the crowd went crazy for that, because it was fun seeing Dan Severn interact and throw some blows. I really liked the interference into the match. It kind of added to the match, and then once everybody who was ringside went to the back, the match started to build up a little more. That's what it added to the match.
Don't you love how people were shitting on Dan Severn even being involved in the match before it even happened? Like, oh, they're spending their time and money concentrating on bringing in Dan Severn and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, what the fuck, man? He's having a minor role in this match. He's not even, like, tagging in, or he didn't even get in the ring. It's a minor role. I don't really think it took away from this match at all. What did take away from it, though, it seems like fans are starting to backlash, and maybe it's resentment for the fact that he hasn't been around a lot. He's been touring Japan mainly with the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Tag Belts that he holds with Rocky Romero, no remorse. But it seems like people are starting to backlash against this strong-style shit that really has been a staple of Ring of Honor for a while now, but Davey Richards really exemplifies, and frankly, I've never been a real big fan of. I love Samoa Joe and Kento Kobashi. I love that match, even if some people dismiss it as just 20 minutes of chopping, 5 stars, whatever. I still enjoyed the match. However, I didn't care for the finish, because it looks ridiculous to me when you've got two 300-pound guys suplexing each other on their heads, and that's not enough to beat them, but a clothesline is. Similarly, Davey Richards drops Eddie Edwards dangerously, frankly, on the apron multiple times in a row in this match. That's not enough, but a few kicks in the head is. I didn't really care for it this time myself. Like I said, I liked their first match a lot better, and especially with how late this show went, including the Steen angle afterwards, because that added on time too. At least they're positioning Steen seemingly to take the belt off Richards sometime next year or whatever. And frankly, it probably can't come soon enough. What'd you think on the match itself, though, Orlando?
The match they had in June, I felt was awesome. It felt different, seeing all the MMA type stuff, transitions and strikes. That was new, that was fun. But this match, it kind of dragged. I know they were trying to recreate a lot of the stuff in this match from what they had in June, but a lot of the no-selling was just ridiculous. It's like, man, you've been kicked in the head 5 times. You're just going to get back up like nothing. I remember one spot where Edwards hit Richards with a tombstone pile driver, and then he hit him with the 2K1 bomb, and that still wasn't enough. And then Davey just comes back and just starts to obliterate him. And it's like, really, guys? Come on now. Like, don't insult our intelligence as wrestling fans. Like, this shit has to end somehow. It was just too much. It was just too much.
And I'm a fan of both guys, but it just seemed like it was a misfire here. Will Brooks,
same here.
What'd you think?
I have to agree with Orlando when we talk about Dan Severn. He didn't really do anything but add to the match because he only did like that one spot where like Roderick and Elton and the manager guy came out and just kicked their ass. I thought it added a lot to the match. I thought the crowd was going nuts for it. And I don't see how anybody could say Severn took away from the match because this is legit the UFC Hall of Famer, and he's training a guy for the match, quote unquote. How can I do anything but add to the match where mixed martial arts is definitely incorporated in your wrestling styles? So I don't see how anybody could say that it was a bad idea. As for the match itself, all I remember is basically like me, Aledo, and Orlando standing next to each other, the 35-minute mark, waving our hands in the air like, please fucking go home already. Shit. You know, like literally every time there's a two-pack, you're like, oh, fuck, come on. Come on, damn it. Like, this is like getting too much, especially because I wanted to get my Dan Severn interview. I had to wait till after the match. But overall, it was like, yes, it was a good match, and the no-selling really got my nerves too, but the fact that we've already been there for 4 hours, it's like, holy shit, how much longer is this fucking thing going to go on? Yes, the Steen promo at the end was kind of cool until he said motherfucker. Other than that, no, I thought the promo was cool, but again, like, the match was too long, too much no-selling, and yes, the ending was like, really? That's what got you? Really? Not falling on your head on the apron? Not all that other shit they were just doing to you? That's what got you? A kick to the head? Cool.
Maybe I'm mistaken, but it seemed as if Dan Severn didn't play enough of a factor in the match, not even directly. What I mean is, if he was supposed to be training Eddie Edwards, was it just me, or did it not seem like there was enough Dan Severn done by Eddie Edwards? You know what I mean? Like the whole beast clutch, or whatever they call it, the dragon sleeper with the body scissors, you'd think that would have played up more into the match, and I think he only tried it once. I just feel like they put so much emphasis on the Dan Severn training thing beforehand, and yet what played out in the ring didn't really reflect that too much.
I felt like it did when I was watching the match, and if you watch closely, you'll see Severn yelling out tips to Eddie. Like when Davey had Eddie in trouble, he's telling him the ropes are here, you got to do this, you got to do that. So I felt like he was playing a pretty good role in it, even though Eddie didn't do a lot of what Dan Severn would do in the ring.
All right, well, overall, though, how'd you think of the show? Was it a 50-50, plus or minus? What'd you think, Orlando? You've been to a lot of ROH shows.
Yes, I have. I liked it overall. Could have been better, but definitely the whole highlight of the show was Kevin Steen. And Kevin Steen coming out at the end, I thought that kind of saved the whole moral of the show, because I think if the show would have ended with just Eddie and Davey, the crowd probably just would have been shitting all over it, mad as hell. But when Steen came out, I think he kind of rejuvenated the crowd, because now we know Steen's going after Davey, which, thank God, it's a nice fresh matchup for ROH, because these guys really haven't interacted much, especially on the one-on-one level. They had their tag feud a couple of years ago, but I think this is going to be a lot better with Steen and Richards. But I like the show. I think it went too long, and hopefully ROH listens to the crowd and listens to the response that they were getting during the show and starts to put on nice, solid 15-minute matches or 20-minute matches instead of drawing out half-hour, 45-minute matches.
Yeah, that American Wolves Steen and Generico tag title feud a couple years ago was real good because the roles were switched, actually. Steen was the face, along with Generico, and the American Wolves were heels, and Davey was pretty much like the jock, like beating up the fat kid, taking advantage of him, bullying him to a degree. At least that's the way he made it out. Like, I'm the kind of guy that beats up people like you. And now it's a completely different dynamic, so it should be interesting to see what they produce one-on-one. And I think this might have been the first show you've gotten to see, maybe from start to finish, Will Brooks. So what'd you think of this ROH show?
It was good. I did enjoy the matches. I did enjoy talking to the guys backstage who were cool people. The matches were good. But again, it was just too long. It gets to be overload. Like, I understand the whole idea of Ring of Honor is, hey, we're the best wrestlers in the world, and they can put on, like, great 20-minute, 25-minute, 30-minute long, like, classics. Wonderful. But when everybody on the card is doing it, doesn't it get to the point where it's not special anymore? The main event is the only match I feel should go like 45 minutes or more. Anything over 20 minutes for most matches getting to the point where, like, okay, you've told your story already. Like the Steen Corino match, it's a hardcore match. Hardcore match is not supposed to go 25 minutes. They're supposed to be like spot fest, kick the shit out of you until you can't stand anymore. It does not take 25 minutes to make sure a guy doesn't stand anymore. Mm-hmm. But overall, I did enjoy the show, though. It was a great show, and I had a lot of fun, and I'd love to do it again in March.
We'll see. Coriander Ache. Speaking of Ring of Honor, you check out their shows broadcasted on SBG, but on their website. So let's hear what some of the latest things you've been watching.
Well, the most recent taping I watched was the one that precedes the pay-per-view. Only 2 matches. The first match was a slow-paced match between Andy Ridge and Eddie Edwards. Truth was on commentary, always hilarious hearing Truth and Nigel McGuinness going back and forth with Kevin Kelly. Eddie won that with a Dragon Sleeper. Michael Elgin wrestled Davey Richards. I'm noticing, though, that the Sinclair matches are getting a lot slower in the coming weeks. The quality is getting way better. The quality of the footage, I mean. But the match pace themselves, it's getting very much slower. It felt more like an AWA taping from when they had the Rockers. I noted that the match started off slow, and then Davey, near the end, started to get a lot faster. And he won that match with a sunset flip after a triangle choke attempt.
While we're talking about this kind of pro wrestling, Corey, you recently attended AAW. I hope, since we've talked about it on the show before, with previous events that you've been to, that you've found out what AAW stands for since then.
Actually...
Okay, you haven't.
I'm sorry.
You're going to have to do that sometime. That's your homework, Corey.
Yes, sir. I will get that done by next show, I promise. Well, the latest AAW show was a lot of fun. They had a lot of new wrestlers. They had 3 pre-show matches and 9 main show matches. So fans got their money's worth. Plus, they had a free meet and greet with Colt Cabana and Aaron, who I might point out loves my artwork, and Sami Callihan, who has made his AAW debut, and this was his second show with them. Tweak Phoenix came back. He is going to be part of a huge blockbuster story match with Joey Eastman. And coming in February, it's going to be Joey Eastman's team going up against the House of Truth in an elimination cage match, which is going to be a lot of fun. Lots of back and forth between the two teams. We had a really great match with Colt Cabana versus Shane Hollister, Shane having recently gone heel after dropping Gregory Iron on his head. Gregory was not at the show. Shane Hollister did not win this match. He actually forfeited. He got his ass handed to him by Colt Cabana. This was hysterical. The show that I went to is already on DVD through Smart Mark Video, by the way. And I think it's only $15, so it's quite a bargain. Our main event was a Fans Bring the Weapons match between Silas Young and Ryan Boz, and that was a ton of fun. Very similar to ECW's Fans Bring the Weapons matches. People brought in VCRs. One person brought in a tennis racket with Jim Cornette's face superimposed over it. Another person brought a bedazzled WWF toy ring, which was hysterical when that was used. Somebody else brought silly string, and Silas Young won due to outside interference from Mason Beck. This was just a fun match. Even though the heel won, I think everybody had a great time. AAW is a lot like ECW in some ways, but they super push their own talent, and it's refreshing. It's absolutely refreshing. Also, Colt was selling Wrestling Road Diaries at the show, and every last one of his copies sold out. I even sat next to one lady who is a fan of yours, Eric, and bought 2 copies, one for herself and one for her best friend. This was a very cute young lady, very curvy, C-cup.
Oh, does she have a Facebook?
I don't know if she's on Facebook, but she's best friends with the woman who runs Colt Cabana's Tumblr.
Well, I'll have to get in touch with Colt about that. But anyway, thanks for letting us know about AAW. We've got a few minutes left, so let's talk about Raw last night. I guess I'll throw it to you, Will Brooks, because you're in our chat room every Monday night during Raw, talking to our fans live, and I guess the 2 things that came out of it, really, were R-Truth returning, attacking The Miz, his former tag partner, and the long-awaited, and by long I mean, what, a week? 2 weeks? Explanation from Kane. Speaking of which, there are new polls on WrestlingRoundtable.com right now about Brock Lesnar. If he ever did come back to WWE, who would you want him to face? And Kane, what do you think would have made a better explanation than what he gave last night? What do you think about what Kane said?
I kind of like what you were saying on the train a little bit about how I never had a childhood, and I hate the fact that all these children look up to Cena, so I have to destroy him. That would have been kind of cool, but if they're really serious about turning Cena heel, that wasn't all a bad way of going about it. Having Kane be the guy that turned Cena to the dark side, it wasn't a horrible way of going about it. It wouldn't have been the way I would have done it, but it wasn't a bad thing to do. And I'm kind of curious to see how this all plays out.
I'm pretty sure that's going to end with Cena saying, "No, I'll never join you. I'm a Jedi like my father before me." Corey, what'd you think of Raw last night?
I saw the Kane bit. First and foremost, who the hell dressed him? That is a retarded outfit. I apologize for anybody offended by the word retarded, but that is a very stupid outfit on Kane.
I'm very offended right now, Corey.
I'm not exactly sure where we're going with this at all. I don't think it was the right choice to turn Kane heel. Kane versus Cena, I'm not quite sure where we're going with this. Did he really say at the 5-minute mark that he wants to save Cena? Please tell me I misheard that. Please tell me that there was some bootlegger playing a prank on me.
Justin in Eagle, Wisconsin, you've been holding this whole time?
Actually, I predicted the whole Kane hates John Cena thing about a week ago, and that he was going to do it to take a stand against Cena standing against hatred. And personally, I thought the whole thing sounded very Kevin Steen-esque, like how he's going to reveal Cena and the fans' true nature about hatred and stuff. And by the way, I think Kane's mask looks like beef jerky.
We are out of time, and this was our last show of 2011. Stay tuned to WrestlingRoundtable.com. We're always going to have stuff, and there's always going to be content there for you. Thanks for supporting the show. So for the panel of Amira Rahim, Coriander Ake, Will Brooks, Orlando O'Neill, and Rodney LeConte, I'm the host, Eric Santamaria. Thank you for supporting Wrestling Roundtable.